Hello everyone and welcome back to 10 Steps in Building AI Skills in Genealogy. I'm Coach Carol and I'm thrilled to help you master basic AI communication. Think of communicating with AI as having a conversation with a knowledgeable research assistant who needs clear, specific instructions. Today, we'll learn how to speak AI effectively to get the most helpful responses for your family history research. Today, we're going to demystify AI and show you exactly how it can help you uncover your family's story. In step 2, we will focus on how to talk to AI tools effectively. Essentially, we're learning the AI speak. The large language models, such as ChatGPT and Claude, have a friendly interface, enabling us to communicate with them in our own language, in print, on the screen, sometimes through voice. Today's video will help you learn essential prompt writing techniques. Prompts are the names for the initiation of conversations with your AI tool. We'll also learn how to avoid common mistakes when working with AI, and we'll take a deep dive into the practice exercise where you'll write your first genealogy-related prompts. There are several schools of thought on how to prompt your AI tool. In the next few slides, I focus on the 4 elements of effective AI prompts: context, specific goal, constraints, and relevant details. Let's consider context first. You need to identify who you are. For example, you could say, I am a genealogist researching. Identify what you're working on. You could say, my ancestor from the 19th century Ireland. And identify what you've already tried. You could say, I've checked census and church records. Next, let's consider your specific goal. Break that down further into 3 components. You need a clear objective. For example, help me identify alternative record sources for. You need to have a desired outcome. For example, to find birth information from the 1850s. And you'll need format preference. For example, you might ask it to present as a numbered list. Next, let's consider the constraints. To help get around these, you should specify the time period. For example, say between 1850 and 1860. You need to specify the location. For example, give the specifics of that location, e.g., County Cork in Ireland. And list any known constraints. For example, Catholic parish records were destroyed in this time period. Next, let's consider relevant details and determine what you can include about your own research, such as the known facts. You've got names, you've got dates, and you've got places. You'll also have knowledge of family relationships, whether they are generational in nature, from one level to another, or marital. Were they married? Were they married twice or more? And of course, the historical context, which is important for us to understand our ancestors' lives in their locale and any global events that would have impacted them. Next, we want to structure our prompts. A good example would be as follows. I'm researching my ancestor Patrick O'Brien, born around 1855 in County Cork. I've already checked church and civil records with no success. Please suggest 1. Alternative record types to check. 2. Common name variations to consider. And 3. Historical events that might affect record availability. Second, use follow-up questions. We need these to build on our previous responses from our AI tools. Your initial question might be about record types. A follow-up about specific archives would be relevant. You could also add detailed questions about accessing those records. So the idea is that you're building on previous responses and then creating responses that are more deeply entwined in your family history. One suggestion you might like to follow up on is to store those prompts in a prompt log. Could be in a spreadsheet or in a Word doc or in a Google Drive. Here are some common mistakes to avoid when dealing with AI tools. Number 1 is being too vague. It's not sufficient to ask the question, help me find my ancestor. You could be more specific and say, help me find birth records for John Smith, born around 1850 in Yorkshire, England. Number 2 mistake to avoid is overloading the prompt. It's really not a good idea to ask this question. Tell me everything about Irish genealogy, all possible records, and every archive in Dublin. Better to say, what are the essential record types for researching 1850s Irish ancestors in County Cork? Common mistake number 3 to avoid is skipping context. This becomes extremely important to get the right response from your AI tools. It's not good enough to ask, why can't I find the marriage record? Better to say, I'm looking for a marriage record from 1855 in Yorkshire, England. I've already checked parish registers and civil registration. What other sources should I consider? Now let's go into our practice activity for this lesson. I've got 2 here for you showing on the screen, and I'll provide some details for exercise 1 in a moment. And I'm going to be using Claude from Anthropic to work through that basic prompt writing exercise. For exercise 2, I suggest that you try these out on your worksheet or just writing them onto your notepad for now, as this one is intended to get you thinking more deeply about what you need to include in a prompt to get a useful response. Now let's take a deep dive into exercise 1, basic prompt writing. What you're seeing on the screen here is a conversation that I've had with Claude today. It's a generic sample prompt for genealogy research, and you'll see it there in the white text on the black background. Exercise 1, basic prompt writing. Choose a research question for a genealogy project and create a prompt using the 4 elements: context, specific goal, constraints, and relevant details. So I began with this very simple basic prompt for Claude, and it came back with a well-structured prompt and gave me a template that I could use for more specific prompts in later projects. You'll see the beginning of it here in the white text on the grey background. And you'll see how it tells you that it will help craft a well-structured genealogy research prompt and looks at the 4 elements that you're using. Let's look deeper into that response. So working from Claude's response for the generic prompt, I used this as an example for a specific prompt where I want to, in the context area, look at the family line in County Tipperary and seeking details of life in Drom and Inch in the 1840s. My specific goal was seeking migration records for Timothy Dwan to Australia before 1865. Then I listed the constraints. It must focus on parish records from County Tipperary between 1839 to 1865, pertinent dates for Timothy. Limited to passenger lists available, and consider possible spelling variations for the name Dwan, and I've put these in place. Then for the relevant details, I'll put in place what I do know already, that Timothy was baptised at Drom and Inch in 1839, and they lived in a residence in the townland of Knocker. And then I put in the names of his father and mother, and the fact that he married in Victoria, Australia in 1865. So I clarified the context. I noted the specific goal, listed the constraints, added in the facts. So Claude's response provided interesting details in the context expansion, specific goal refinement, constraints detail, and relevant details expansion. Let me show you these. You'll see 2 or 3 of the responses from Claude here in the right white print on grey background, and it gives me a context expansion, and in it listed this very useful point about the Great Famine of the 1840s and the impact of the family, which would specifically draw in reasons for the migration to Australia. Then in the second response, specific goal refinement, it suggests that I locate passenger manifests for this ancestor. And then in the constraints details, it tells me to focus on Australian and in particular Victorian passenger lists and any assisted immigration passenger lists that might be available. Once again, noting the variations of the name, the time period, and the geographic focus. And finally, in the relevant details expansion, Claude noted further really useful points in the response, including the importance of the baptism record, because it would confirm family location in Knocker. Claude also noted the names of the parents and the known destination, the marriage, and then the possible research, where to look for these records, the Port of Melbourne shipping records, Victorian immigration schemes, and also Irish immigration records from ports like Cork or Dublin. So we're getting much better responses here, and it's helping me now dig deeper in the research for this family line. The key takeaways from this lesson today include: be specific and structured in your prompts. 2, provide that relevant context and constraints. 3, build on responses with follow-up questions. And 4, use templates to maintain consistency. And by templates here, I'm referring to those generic prompt suggestions that you saw from Claude. So these are the key takeaways for Step 2, Mastering Basic AI Communication. Our next steps. Practice writing at least 3 prompts using the templates. If you like, share your prompts in our Facebook group or with a friend. Keep a log of successful prompts for future reference. And do prepare now for the next lesson on research planning.